بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, and welcome to our next session on Taj al-Arus, al-Hawi, Li Tahdhib al-Nufus, the crown of the groom, with regard to that which contains the disciplining of the souls or the refinement of the souls. Alhamdulillah, we have been journeying through this amazing and beneficial book of the great Imam Ahmed Ibn Atā'illah al-Sikandari rahimahullah ta'ala, who wrote this as a discourse for the spiritual aspirant, the one who intends and engages in a struggle against himself and wants to improve and become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having talked about several topics and the discussions behind the spiritual journey, we now move on to some practical steps that the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala, he wants us to think about and to engage in and realize that we need to make these steps if we really want to overcome the caprice and the whims that are within us, and to get over our personal preferences and desires. There has to be a challenge, there has to be a fight back, a struggle from ourselves, our spiritual selves. So he says, how often you demand for yourself to obey Allah, yet it slackens. So it's tough. He says you only need to treat yourself in the beginning, meaning it's the first step that really matters, and then when it tastes Allah's grace, it will come willingly. So many of us, we don't even make the first step. We don't go to the masjid, we don't want to go to the class, we don't want to go on that journey, that retreat, the umrah, the hajj. We delay it, we postpone it, we'll do it some other time. Often people say, oh, that's just for the pious people, the good people. We're just normal, we don't have to be so special pious, we just be normal and good people. That's a misconception. That's actually a falsehood, a false statement. Praying, fasting, all good actions are for everyone and to your own level, but to be devoid of any good action is spiritual bankruptcy, is nothing. So we need to have something in our lives, and the first step is all we need to take. Once you take the first step, it will come willingly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the next step, inshallah ta'ala. Then the sweetness that you used to experience in disobedience, so with the experience and the sweetness and the enjoyment we get through doing other things, even if they're mundane and worldly, will then start to shift towards the obedience. He says, you shall in turn find in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The similitude of faith in the heart is like that of a green tree. So here another metaphor of the one who has faith, has a green tree, meaning it bears fruits, meaning it gives good, it's strong, it's healthy, it does its job, it benefits those around it. It says when acts of disobedience become too much for it to bear, it dries up, meaning that when our faith is that green tree, disobedience affects it, but because we have strong faith, or we have the root cause, which is faith, behind our actions, the tree remains healthy, or it remains in a good shape. But disobedience works away at our iman. This is the metaphor here. The disobedience, chips away at our faith and our resilience and our firmness in our beliefs. It says it becomes too much at one point for it to bear. The tree can't bear the disobedience. It dries up, and its ability to support and give benefit dissipates, and that's a weakness of iman coming through sinning. So this is now the step. We've got to stop sinning. We've got to start doing the good deeds. This is the first step to now really change in life. It doesn't have to be massive steps, baby steps. Imam Ghazali was asked, what is the ruling regarding the person who doesn't pray? He said, you take him by the hand and you take him to the prayer. The ruling isn't you call him this, you attack him, or so on and forth. The first step is to pray one prayer. The second step is to maybe do 2 and 3, but we have to start somewhere. The sins will eventually destroy us if we don't change. Whoever wants to fulfill his obligations, then let him forsake the unlawful. Whoever forsakes offensive actions will be assisted in performing good deeds. So the way it works is, you avoid haram, you fall into the obligatory level. So you go to the basic level of obedience, which is what we all need to struggle for initially. This is like the first level of taqwa, to avoid the haram. Then the second level is that let's look at that which is not good, not beneficial, is disliked. There's a reward in leaving it, but it's not necessarily a sin if we are doing it, or it's not a massive blemish, but it's better to leave. Let's try and leave those things. This is a higher level of taqwa, higher level of God consciousness, of fearing Allah. So now you want to stay away from that which is displeasing, or not just good, it's just bad, it's not just conducive to you as a Muslim. So I avoid it, you get reward, you reach a high level. And then he says, you'll be assisted in performing more good deeds if you do this. You'll get more and more good if you start making efforts to avoid more and more disliked things. Right? This is the change we need in life, from disobedience to obedience, from removing the disliked to getting into the liked, and therefore more good actions. Whoever forsakes the mubah, that which is just okay to do, the things that are permissible in general, just okay, you can sit and talk to each other, you can read a book, you can enjoy a meal with a friend. These are mubah. They're not detrimental to you. They're not, I would say, sinful or disliked, but they can be detrimental, because if you avoid them, whoever forsakes such things, meaning you stop doing these actions, you get away from the mundane acts of life, He will give him, Allah will give the person generously beyond imagination, allow him to become close to His presence. So when we shun even the halal, everyday things in life that are fine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us more in return, gives us more and more openings, and brings us closer and closer to Him. And this is the rule that Imam Ibn Atā'illah is trying to get through to us here. Leave haram, you'll be on a level of obligation, and obligations will be fulfilled. Leave the dislike, and you'll be giving more and more good deeds, and more good in your life will come. Leave even the mundane and permissible acts that have no benefit, and turn that time, and you will find that time turning into benefit and goodness and openings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However much you sacrifice for Allah, you will get more in return from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In addition, whoever forsakes listening to whatever is unlawful for him, He will allow him to truly listen to His speech. In other words, whoever doesn't listen to the wrong, stays away from the discourse which is bad, you will be given more and more openings and benefits from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then this act of, how do I start worshipping? Isn't it tough? Isn't it so hard? Only special people do that. He says how easy it is for you to do an act of devotion wherein lies caprice for yourself. So actually we find it okay to do acts of worship when there's a benefit for us, when it fulfills our desires. And how arduous is that in which there is no caprice. How tough is it to do the act of charity when you don't get a benefit back yourself, and you don't get any recognition, no sense of feel good factor. It becomes hard to do the act of good. An example of this would be if you intended to perform a voluntary Hajj. Let's go on Hajj. Somebody says, no, let's give that money in charity. You've already been in Hajj, right? What happens? You find it tough. You think, how can I do that? How I should go on Hajj? Hajj is so important, and we should go, and it's beautiful. What sponsor somebody else's Hajj? MashaAllah, what a great thing to do, which is a beautiful thing to do, by the way. But the nafs now has a share in the voluntary Hajj. Obviously, Fard Hajj, the Shaykh specifically mentions the voluntary one, because the Fard Hajj you may all go upon, and there's no excuses or no gain in that other than fulfilling your obligations. There's no caprice in that. It's removed in obligatory acts. But for the voluntary Hajj, yes, sponsor somebody else, give in the way of charity. It becomes burdenless. That is because the act of pilgrimage is something apparent, and so the self finds gratification in it, whereas charity is hidden. People won't know you're giving charity. People won't know your Hajj. You can announce, you're going to have visitors, you're going to be there, you're going to enjoy it. It's you. Charity is just an act, and it disappears. Nobody knows. And if you want to show people again, self-gratification might make it easier, it might make it less of an act of worship and insincere. So this is where we can find ways to give and do things because we feel, or we should become more sincere. Find ways to do things by finding sincerity. So we should actually do this. So we shouldn't seek the dunya from what we do. We should actually find ways of seeking Allah and the akhirah from what we do, and then we realize those are the best actions that we could ever do. A similar situation arises when you're studying sacred knowledge, when in reality it is for other than Allah. So you're studying, but you have the intention of becoming known, famous, and so forth. For instance, you study through the night. And why do you study through the night? You find pleasure, you find ladha, this taste and nice pleasure in studying. Why? Because you're getting more knowledgeable. You're going to be more well known. You're going to be talking about more masail, more issues, more discourse, and more look better and intelligent and intellectual, Islamically intellectuality in front of the masses and get status and recognition. That's not for Allah. It becomes easy to study for that reason. It becomes very easy to study for that reason. But what if you had to get up in the middle of the night, not to study, but just to pray 2 rakats? Just tahajjud, just to pray 2 rakats for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you see now how that becomes so burdensome and so tough on the soul? and you feel like, oh, I can't do this, I'm so tired, I have to get up, I have to do this, I have to do that. And what happens? No prayer takes place. What happens? You study all night. You see, we're not actually obeying Allah, we're being subservient to our whims, not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of them myself craved for marriage, whereupon I saw the mihrab split open and a shoe made of gold, adorned with pearls emerged. So he said to me, if this is her shoe, then what about her face? Thereafter the craving for marriage left my heart. So again, another example of reflecting over the fact that we crave things in this life, but there's more to come. Food you crave is coming in the next life. Self-gratification is coming all in the next life. For this life, Allah has commanded us to do certain things to control ourselves. It's a test. Without a doubt, this life is all a struggle and a test. And it shouldn't be thought of as otherwise. Imam Ibn Atā'illah says in one of his hikam, one of his wisdoms, in his hikmah, he says, لا تستغرب وقوع الأكدار ما دمت في هذه الدار. Do not deem strange, do not consider weird, unusual the occurrences of anxieties and difficulties and worries in this abode. Akdar, things that get you sad and down. Don't deem that unusual. Why? فإنها, for surely this dunya ما أبرزت إلا مستحق وصفها or مستحق وصفها. It hasn't أبرز مستحق وصفها. It hasn't given forth. It doesn't bring about except what its description merits, what its description has to show. وواجب نعتها, and what is incumbent upon its character, its nature. This dunya is not here to give you a life of luxury and ease and comfort and opulence, and it's not about that. Life is a test. The Imam is saying, just get ready for that. Don't be someone who's finds it weird, because then you have a lack of understanding of this life. If you find it weird that this whole world is full of trials and tribulations, ups and downs, calamities, difficulties, times of happiness, sadness, everything, and you're weird, you find that weird, you find that strange, why is it happening? We have surely missed the mark, and we've surely lost the understanding of why things happen. So we have to put things in context. That's the point here. There is another life. This life is not a life of the reward, not a life of the gratification and the enjoyment. This is a life where we sacrifice that for Allah, to feel, not just to get the reward in the next life, but actually feel a sense of self-control, of self-respect and honor and subservience before our Creator, surrender to our Creator, worship of our Creator. That's what it's all about. If we can't actually do these things and sacrifice these things, we're not servants of Allah. We're servants of our desires. We're not worshippers. We're not we're not Muslims and have submission. We're just, by name, we can claim to be these things, but in reality, we've proven otherwise. So it's all about ourselves. And then he says, whoever has lodgings prepared for him will not be satisfied with sitting in rubbish heaps. Right? If you got a home, you're not going to be happy in other ways. So perform righteous deeds privately, keeping them between yourself and Allah. Do not let your family notice them. Store them away with Allah, so that you will find them on the day of resurrection, because the self takes pleasure in mentioning its deeds. Right? So the privacy is necessary because of removing of this feeling of goodness and the pleasure that you get from mentioning or people knowing. Privacy is important. Privacy, that worshipping Allah as an individual is what it's all about. It says here, one of them fasted for 40 years without his family noticing it, and that is a sign of sincerity. That family, meaning your wife, your spouse, they did 4 years of fasting without your even family knowing that. Do not expend your breaths other than obedience to Allah. Do not look at the minuteness of the breaths. Rather look at their worth and the reward that Allah will give the slave for these moments if they're used in the correct way. The breaths are jewels. Have you seen anyone throw a jewel in the bin? Our capital as Muslims, as servants of Allah, is time. Nobody throws their capital in the bin. Nobody gets the investment money in the capital and thousands and of pounds and dollars and says, here, there you go, I can't be bothered with it. Every penny counts. Every bill needs to be paid. Every investment needs certain areas to be successful. It needs thinking behind as well. Your life is your capital. The days you have are your capital. The hours and the minutes and the seconds are our capital. Do we even think of how to use them? Do we even plan ahead? Do we think about how our time needs to be used to serve Allah, to serve our families, to work, to provide, to rest? The more we plan our time, the more every moment becomes an act of worship. Even the times of rest. It says this, the Prophet said that the sleep of a fasting person is worship as well, because he's fasting. So there you go, fasting, every breath is full of reward because you're fasting. Staying in wudu, Every moment becomes blessed. Right? Do we think of this? Do we think of this time, this moment in my life was wasted doing absolutely nothing? No value to this moment in my life. I've just lost money. Somebody says, you've just lost $100. How do you feel? You just like, no, now add that together, every day losing hundreds of dollars. You just lost thousands and tens of thousands of pounds and dollars, and you're just not bothered. Our life is just dwindling away, dying out. Every day goes by, every a part of our life goes by until there's no days left, until there's no life left, no capital. We have to invest it, and the way you invest the capital of this life, the time, is to give it to Allah, to use it for Allah. In worldly life, you pay for things and you get returns after a while, pretty soon, within a couple of years, 4 years, 5 years. Some investments are longer. This investment is with Allah. It comes back when you go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's the best of all deals, the best of all investments, and the most generous and best of all returns. There's no greater reward and return than the investment in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the surrender, submission of your time to Allah. That's our capital that we need to invest in that way. May Allah give us the tawfiq to do this. Then finally, what we'll discuss today is the final statement here. Do you improve your exterior yet ruin your interior? Right? If you're submitting to Allah, you're surrendering to Allah, it's all about, we said, privacy is about what's inside. Nobody sees this apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what you present to Allah is inside. Think about that. If you only improve your exterior, then you are like a leper who wears new clothes while pus and serum oozes out of his interior. Look, you've got disease, you've got blemishes. You can cover them over from people, but underneath is still a blemish. Underneath is still a problem. It's a disease that's oozing out all this filth. So this is our hearts. If you don't prepare the hearts, if you don't fix the hearts, those hearts are full of disease and wrong and bad characteristics, and they'll continue to pour them out unless we work on them and rectify them and cure them, the disease of the heart. You rectify that which people witness, yet you do not rectify your heart, which is for your Lord. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, the guidance, the strength, the ability to purify our hearts, to make these first steps of worship, which is part of the purification process. It removes the sins, it removes the darknesses, it brings about light, and it brings about sweetness of faith. May Allah give us tawfiq to act on what we have said, to worship Allah with submission, to focus on the afterlife, to fulfill our obligations in this life. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.